Hello. Let's talk about dynamic blocks. So, one of the things that is really valuable when you start getting to areas of the drafting process where you're going to need to reuse things over and over again, um, something that's valuable is to have a collection of dynamic blocks. So, what a dynamic block is a block that has built in attributes so that you can make a change without having to completely redraw something. Whoops. So I'm going to copy this, put it over here so we can see it a little bit better, and I'm going to zoom in. So this is just a pretty typical reference line. You have your drawing number, your sheet number, a title, a space for notes, the view label, and then a place for scale. When you actually click on this and select it, you'll start to see a couple of things. Number one, there's an arrow here, and that arrow lets you adjust the length of this, and it takes the view label and the scale label with it. If you click on the scale label, there are a bunch of options here, and it automatically puts whichever size or dimension that you want to go in there. This is one of those things that's not difficult to type, but if you're doing 15 of them on a different sheet, not having to double click into this menu when you forget to update it is really helpful, in my opinion. Let's take a look at the rest of this stuff. So how do we change it? Well, on a dynamic block that's already been created with attributes, you just double click on it and it pops up a menu where you can then go in and edit the information in there. So where it says title, really quickly, take note of the things here. So you've got the tag, that's what's visible here. You have the title or the prompt, and the prompt is, what you want the person to put in there. And then the value. So the value is the thing that I can change from this menu. These other two things I would have to change somewhere else. But I'm going to go ahead and put platform frame. And you'll notice that as I change that, it live updates. Lovely. On view, I'm going to say that this is the top view. Some people disagree about how many words you need here. I'm of the opinion that if it's in that corner, we know it's the view because that's where it typically goes. And if it says things like top, front, side, it's clearly talking about a view, but other people might disagree. Wherever you are, do what they ask you to do. Here, this is a different kind of a window. You'll notice that instead of it staying in that menu that we had a moment ago, it popped up this larger window that is also adjustable. I can move this left to right. I can open this up a little bit more, and it will automatically do that when I add things. So if I say make one, use 2x4, I can adjust that. I can make that one line, and then I click OK, and it brings me back into this menu, and that's all that I see here. So I'm going to click OK, and now let's say that it's probably a little bit bigger than this, so I'm going to adjust this line here so that it looks like that. Okay, great. So there's a whole bunch of different options in here, and having all of that pre-made for me means that instead of me sitting there fussing with the location of thing relative to another thing, I can just type in the information and move on. So that's what we're going to try to replicate today in this tutorial. It might take us a while. I will try to kind of jump around a little bit. Well, no, we'll see. Okay. Before we go do that, let me just show you some of the different options. There's a bunch of different things you can do with something like this. So here, this is just a hexagon where I can just double click and change the label. That's all that one does. It's very, very simple, very clean, but it's something that I use all the time, so it's valuable for me to have. This is an arrow to indicate direction. You'll notice that it's different from this arrow, but it has the ability to rotate. So I can take the arrow and put it in whatever orientation I need to in order to communicate what I need to communicate. And then I also have the ability to change the name here or whatever the value is in here. So let's say I'm indicating downstage instead of upstage. I can do that. If I need to indicate stage left, I can do that. It doesn't really, what you can put whatever you want to in there. This is the similar thing. I can move that arrow around so it indicates wherever I would like it to. This always stays up and down, which I find valuable personally. And then this is another change in what's visible, visibility state. So if I want to use that as a reference to another drawing, I can do that as well, as opposed to a reference to a label. This is fairly straightforward. It's just a bunch of different views that I might need for whatever reason. It also has this one here. There's a custom label where I can double click and it's just a blank label. This is basically like doing a text thing, but I don't know why I chose to include that, but I did. It's a nice option to have. You've been introduced to this one. This is a grain or span indicator. It spins. Whee! It also changes size equally on both sides so that the words are always in the middle. This is a notes box. You can see that here, that it changes size. Originally, the reason that it is movable from where it is, like with the reason that the anchor point is in this corner, is because I oftentimes put this here so that it looks all, nice and profesh in that corner. I don't know, I might change that around at some point in time. The other thing is that this whole frame on my drawing is in fact a giant dynamic block. You'll notice here that I have information about which theater we're in, but I have this set up so that I can change it to the lab, to the Conradi, to the cab, without having to look up anything. All the information is there already. Here's a section for revisions. Those dots, by the way, these dots are on a non-plotting layer, so I can use them as anchor points if I'm putting text there, but I don't have to worry about them printing on my actual drawing. This, you'll notice, is not dynamic. This section here where it says director, designer, technical director, whatever, that's because that's not stuff that I'm going to change every single time I use this title block. I'm going to change that based on the show, but if I have to change that every time I put on a new sheet, I'm going to be grumpy about it. So that stuff is changed in the block itself, not in an attribute. That's how I prefer to do it. You don't necessarily have to do it that way. Here's a section. Let me just double click into this. That's not what I wanted. I double click. Sheet number. So you'll notice this is grayed out right here. That's because this is automatically generated. So when I change this number here, when I change the name of the layout tab, it will automatically update to anywhere where it has that. I can show you how to do that as well. Scale is as noted. This is something where I can type it in. So if I want it to be, if it's referring to the whole sheet, I can just go ahead and change that like that. I'm going to put it back the way it was. Unit number, whatever, unit name. This one is a larger one. Whee! I also have a description, which is there to be a little bit more descriptive. So, platform, frame, and skin. No, lid. And that fits in right there. Drawn by, this is always the initials of whoever drew it. File name, folder, both of those things should automatically generate. Great. I just hit cancel so that all of that went away, but whatever. All right, so that's our walkthrough of some of the blocks that I personally use for plating. There are a couple of other places where I use dynamic blocks or just blocks in general. One of those things is, let me see if I can find it. Whoa. Oh, this block doesn't have any dynamic things in it. Never mind, not that one. I often use, is it in here? It is not in here. That's interesting. Well, we'll come back to it if I have time at the end. if I have time. This is a video. Okay, so let's say that we want to create our own reference line and do, basically recreate what I had there before. The easiest thing to do is to start with the basic architecture or the basic lines of what the object is going to be. You can absolutely create a block and then draw inside of that. It's not the way that I prefer to do it. You have a little bit less control about your view, so that bugs me. But you can do it whichever way. In this case, I'm going to select the things that are going to be part of my block, and I'm going to type block. Now that those are a block, I'm going to name it. I'm going to say sample. I'm going to call this ref line. I'm not calling it ref line because there is already a ref line block in this drawing, so that's why I put sample on it. Here, picking your pick point is going to be really useful if you're thoughtful about it, because that's the place that you can click and grab it from. So I'm going to say that wants to go right there. That feels convenient, and I'm going to click yes. Okay, great. And now I'm going to go into block edit and start working on it. Okay, the first thing I want to do is to start thinking through which things I want where, or which words and letters I want where. So I definitely want a number here and a number here, the title, a space for notes, views, and then a space for scale. I'm going to add in attribute definitions to do that. You can start this command by typing @def, or you can just click on the button. So I'm just going to click on the button, and it's going to say, you want to add an attribute? Excellent. What do you want from this attribute? So this is where those tags and those prompts come into place. The tags cannot have any spaces or special characters for the most part. So let's just say drawing number. The prompt is drawing number. How you do that is up to you. I don't necessarily like to do all caps all the time, but it just kind of varies. And then the default, I will just put in the number 1. That means that anytime you add this block in, it will already have the number 1 pre-entered into it. It doesn't have to be the number 1. It could be, maybe it's actually X, so that you can see that it's not the number that you think it should be. Text settings, justification, left, middle, center. I am going to do bottom center because that's going to give me a grip in a useful location. And then my text height is 1/8 of an inch. Text style is my standard. Not that. All of this, yeah, all of that sounds pretty normal. I'm going to click here. Oh, it's not giving me that center point. That's where I want it. You'll notice that when I clicked there, it didn't actually line it up. Like it didn't look like I was lining it up in the right position, but because I had set that to bottom center, it aligned it to the bottom center once I clicked. So it's a little bit deceptive. I'm also going to do a thing because I'm persnickety like that, and I'm going to move that up by, I don't know, like a 32nd of an inch. Yeah, that looks like it's about the right height. I might go back and change these. It's not a big deal. Okay, so I've added in that attribute. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add in sheet number, and this is going to say sheet number. And then on the default, instead of adding in a default number that you would have to then change every single time you want to make an adjustment, I'm going to click over here because this is a field that it can, this is where you tell it if you want it to automatically populate something. So this is a thing where this has to be correct for every single drawing on that sheet, and it shares a number with the sheet number that's in the bottom right hand corner on your title block. So for both of those things, instead of me having to go in and pay really close attention and make sure that I'm always updating my sheet number, I'm going to say put the value of whatever this tab is so that anytime I change the tab name, it's automatically updating my sheet number wherever that appears. So I'm going to go in here, and there are so many things. To do that particular one, well, let me walk you through some of the other stuff. You've got dates and times. Any of these, whichever one works best for you is fine. This will give you information that's in the document settings. I would say don't use these because you don't have access to some of them. Things like author, some of these you don't have the same access to it on AutoCAD for Mac. So if everybody's using similar machines, you can kind of go to town on this. Like you can create your own stuff. Like it's kind of cool. But if everybody is using different platforms, like some are on AutoCAD and some are on AutoCAD for Mac, this is going to get, this isn't as valuable as it is if everyone's using the same thing. So there's that. So I encourage you, like when you do this, like pause the video and click through this and see what's available here, because there might be information that you're having to put in every single time and it's just annoying and you don't want to anymore. Okay, so to put in the value that I actually want, I'm going to go to Other, and then I'm going to go to System Variable, and it's going to give me all of this stuff that is very cryptic. I'm going to scroll down, or maybe I'm just going to type C tab. That stands for Current Tab. So it's saying I'm in the model space, which I technically am. And then you can change things here, whether that always wants to be uppercase, lowercase, yada, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a number probably, so I'm just going to leave it. And then I'm going to say, okay. Do I need to move any of this? I'm going to change my justification. So last time I did middle, I did bottom center. This time I'm going to do top center. I'm going to click OK. Again, you can see that it's not aligned correctly. But I'm going to go there and it aligns it correctly. The last one I moved down a 32nd of an inch. I'm going to move it a 32nd of an inch, and now that looks great. So before I move on and before I go to other things that are going to complicate what I'm looking at, I'm actually going to test this and make sure that it works. In AutoCAD for PC, which is what I'm using, I can click on Test Block and it's going to actually open a new file. And if I double click, I can see what it thinks, how this block is going to behave. It's less valuable when it's just simple attributes. This is so valuable when you're doing that other thing, dynamic movements and things like that. So this looks like it's all behaving properly. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to say close it, and it'll take me back to this version of my block window. Just so that I don't accidentally screw myself up, I'm going to click Save. Lovely. And then I'm going to take a look at this window over here, because I could go ahead, and I will later, but I could go ahead and add in attributes over here. Actually, you know what? I will go ahead and put at least one over there. So let's do one more attribute, and we're going to call this one View. So this is my View, and I'm going to say View, and the default is going to be View. There needs to be a value there. It doesn't really matter what it is, so that you can see that it's a thing that you need to adjust. You don't have to do that. It will populate either way into that window when you double click, but I find it useful to have text there because at least on PC, if you double click on the text or on the location of the attribute, it will pop you automatically into that attribute when you open up that window, which I find really helpful. But you can't do that if there's no text in it. Okay, for justification, I'm going to do bottom right, standard 1/8 of an inch. All of this is fine. I'm going to click OK, place it right there at the end, and I'm going to do that same move up that I did with everything else. 32nd of an inch. Great. Okay, now we can start getting into our dynamic block situation. So this one is actually relatively simple. I just want to be able to take this end and scooch it out as far as I want to. However, I do also want the view to go with it. So to do that, I'm going to start, if you click through this menu, you'll see that there's a bunch of different parameters and things that you can adjust and change and yada blah blah blah. So I need to first, this is not something that I do all the time. So I might get the order wrong, but I think that's right. So I'm going to add in a parameter first where I'm changing something about this thing. So that's a linear parameter and it's establishing a distance. Okay, so now I can go into actions and I can say stretch this. And then it's going to say, which parameter do you want me to stretch? And I'm going to say the one I just created, this distance. And then it's going to say, okay, where do you want me to put the arrow? And I'm going to say over here. And then it's going to prompt me to specify the first corner of the stretch frame. So you'll notice that I'm just paying attention to what it's prompting me to do. And I'm going to say, it's this. This is the stuff that I want to stretch. Notice that there's an attribute inside of this and part of the line is inside of this. So this is establishing what is getting stretched. And then it says, select the things that you want me to stretch. So I'm going to say everything in this thing, in the within this box, and then also that. Now I'm going to click, or I'm going to type enter, and you'll see that this window is here now. And now I'm going to use that test block again. And see if that worked the way that I needed it to. So you see I've got my little arrow here. Heck yeah, it did. And the view is moving with the end of the line. Great. We love that. So that means that my test block has done its job. I can close it. And I'm back here. So let's add in, let's say that I do actually want to see, be able to change the scale here really quickly. So there's a few ways, a few things that I can do. I could just put in an attribute here. So maybe let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to say scale, and I'm going to say scale. And I'm going to make the default not to scale so that it kind of flags it as like, hey, this isn't normal. I'm going to do the justification as the top right. Everything is normal here. And I'm going to say yes right there. And I'm going to do that same, move down like that. Okay. So I'm going to test this block again. And we're going to notice something. And that is that when we do this, the scale doesn't move with it. And that's because we didn't select the scale to move when we put that in there, because we made the scale after we put in that dynamic movement. So I'm going to close this test block and I'm going to show you what you can do about that. Down here, you can see where it's talking about that stretch parameter that we used, or that stretch action. So you'll notice, oh gosh, did I stretch it in such a way that it didn't make sense anymore? I'm gonna leave that for now and see if it's just a fluke. We'll find out in a second. Because this line is still where it needs to be. It's very strange. So I'm going to click down here and I can click new selection or modify selection. If I'm being completely honest, the only thing that helps, like it just leaves the stretch frame, like where the stretch frame was, and you still, oh look, it still has accent collected. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to click scale now so you can see all the things that have been selected. And I'm going to hit enter to accept it, and now I'm going to go test my block again, and hopefully this fits. Look at that, now it moves with it. Great. Okay, so before I showed you that I had that drop down arrow that lets me adjust what the scale is pretty much whenever I want to. So that's another type of dynamic block feature, which is a visibility state. So I can change which things I see when with a drop down menu. So to add that in, I need to go back to parameters, select visibility, and then I'm going to click wherever I want that drop down arrow to live. Since it's modifying the scale function, I'm going to click it right there. And it says visibility. I can rename this to anything I want to. So let me double click that. I think that's how you do it. And I'm going to, there's a way to rename this. Hang on. Let me remember how to do it. Rename the parameter right there. So instead of it being called visibility, I'm going to call it scale. Look at that. So you'll notice when I did that it added in, or it made this colorful. It was grayed out before. So now this is no longer grayed out, and I can start to change things with it. So let's say that I have several visibility states. I'm going to click on that so I can start doing stuff with it. I'm going to say, just for the sake of argument, we're going to do 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and full scale. I typically have a bunch more scales in there, but for now, let's just do the few. And then also we want the option to put in a custom scale. So I'm just going to make a few, and we're going to call this 1/4 inch. I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to call it 1/2 inch. I'll make another one. I'm going to call it 1 inch. I'm going to make another one and call it 1 foot, or full scale. And this one I'm going to rename to, I'm just going to type scale. That'll make sense in a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and set that one to current. Click OK. So now I'm going to take a minute and just put in some text. Whoops. I don't know why, but somebody always told me to just always use mtext. And over here, I'm going to make myself a text box. And within that, I'm going to write 1/4 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches. I forgot to put the dash in. Okay, 1 foot 0 inches. That looks correct to me. I'm going to change the justification. I want that to be top right, like that. I'm going to click away. So now I can come over here, place it there, and then I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to make all of the words that I want to see here. I'm going to only put one there for now. So I'm just going to change that to say 1/2 inch. And in fact, so this stacked, I don't actually want it to stack. So I'm going to go back in and unstack this. Just because of the way that it's going to end up looking. So I'm going to put these off to the side, one, and I'm intentionally not putting these in there yet for good reason. If you will hold, please. So what else do we do? 1 inch like that. And it was 1 foot equals 0 inches like that. Okay. So now you can see on this drop-down menu that I have all of those options that I made before. And that when I go from here to here, some of them are invisible. Where did they go? So that's exactly what we're doing. We're just changing which thing we can see in which visibility state. So I'm going to go back to scale, and I'm going to click on this one. So this is going to show me the shadow of things if they are in the drawing but not visible in this state. So now when I click to 1/4 inch, I can see this one. Like I can still see this one, and I can't see any of this, but I can still see this. But I need to change that. So let me show you how. I'm going to select what I want to become invisible. So I clicked on that scale thing. I turned it off, and then I'm going to turn this one on. And now that's visible. So I'm going to put it where I needed it to go. I'm going to move it down 1/32 of an inch. And actually, I'm just literally giving myself a point to just drop those onto that I'm going to delete later. I'm going to make sure that that's visible. Okay. I'm going to go to, so let me see what we look like in scale. I'm going to make these not visible. This one not visible. This visible. Okay. It actually shouldn't matter. I should be able to just delete it. Okay, so now I can click through and make that adjustment everywhere that I need to. So scale gets turned off. This gets turned on. Great, now I'll move it into place. using, oh, I didn't move my arrow down. One 32nd. And now I can just use this handle to drop into that spot. Lovely. We're in 1/2 inch. Now I need to go to 1 inch. Scale becomes invisible. 1 inch becomes visible. Drop it in place. Go to full scale. Scale becomes, or whichever one becomes visible. This one becomes invisible. Drop this in place. Delete my guide. Okay. So now what I should see is that I'm going to change the mode here so that it just shows me what I think what it's going to look like at the end. So you can see that we're just changing which version of this we're looking at. Okay, so I don't know why this has an angry exclamation point. I suspect we will find out soon. But to test this out, I'm going to click test block and see if it's behaving the way that I think it should. Now, if you've been following along, you will probably be able to tell that we haven't done anything about adding the rest of these views or even this view state into this block relative to the ability to stretch it. So right now, I would fully anticipate that this doesn't necessarily do everything I think it should, like that. So you'll see here that my visibility state is just changing stuff, and that those dimensions, those scales are stuck where I put them originally. But this one isn't, because we went back and changed that one. So we're going to have to go back and do it again. The point, I think, is really pay attention to what which things you want to do when, and then save yourself some time and do the things, like do this stretch at the very, very end so that you don't have to worry about whether or not you got everything in it, and then having to go back in and adjust it. But it's not difficult. It just does take a little bit extra time. All right, so let's go back into this. We're going to click modify. It's going to say, where do you want to put your stretch frame? And I'm going to say in the exact same place. And then it's going to say, okay, which bits of this, and you can see this is still there. I'm going to click on my scale, and I'm going to change this so that I can see everything, and I'm going to select all of that. You know what? That's weird. It deselected some of it. Oh, it's because I started another command. Okay, I got to do it again. All right, so we're here. I'm going to say modify. I'm going to say go from here to here. And I'm going to say all of this and this. And I'm going to click enter. And let's test it again. See if it's behaving the way we think it should. Are we moving correctly? Oh, this bodes well. Oh, look at that. Okay, so if you've been following along, it took us a couple of minutes, but now we have this block that we can use every time we go to, I'm going to go and close the block editor. That's going to ask me if I want to save it. I'm going to say yes. So now, anytime I go to plate, I don't have to change as much stuff. I'm like kind of streamlining my workflow. And as we hopefully have learned, the fewer strokes that you can take, the faster you're going to be. Like the fewer keystrokes, the better. But there's nothing in this block. What's going on? Why does this look ridiculous? So there's a couple of things that you can try. The first one is to just delete it and bring in a new one. So like if I bring in a new iteration of this, whoa, it's going to ask me to fill in some of that information. So I'm going to say, sure, that, let's call it top view. And oh, you'll notice that there's a scale here. Nice. I'm just going to click yes, and it automatically populates. If, however, I change this to that, and then I double click in here, the scale thing is gone because it's not an attribute in this version of the view, which I think is kind of slick. So anyway, there's that. But this one is still sad. So let's try a couple things. You can do @sync, and that's just saying sync the attributes of this block that I've created. Let's see if that works. There it is. Heyo. Sometimes this still won't work properly. Like there will be, you know, I don't know, issues, whatever. And in that case, I would just say reinsert it and then you'll be fine. Okay, so let's say that you've done all of that and you realize that you really hate the fact that this is view and you want to name it to something else. Well, you can do that. You can manage your attributes. And this is one of my 2 or 3 favorite AutoCAD commands. It is Batman. Do note that it is double T bat, not single T bat. Anyway, so you type Batman, and that brings up a list of all of the attributes that you have in all of the blocks in your file. Let's make this bigger so we can see. So you can see that these are the attributes in my title block, and this is my sample ref line. So let's say that when I bring up that initial window, that I don't even want the sheet number, like I don't want the sheet number to be the second thing that I hit. I want it to go from drawing number directly to, I didn't even put a title in there. Oops. I would normally have a title. I would want to go from drawing number straight to my title, for example. So I'm going to say, I want to move that sheet number all the way down to the very end. So I can do that, and I can say apply. And now that I've done that, if I click on this, oh, I gotta close it. Oh, is Grumpy Grumps. So here you go, we've got a Grumpy Grump. Oh man. Yeah, let's just reinsert that. And now my sheet number is at the bottom. So we're here, it's a top view. It is not to scale. There we go. Okay, so because I edited that, now things are sad. So do be careful about changing your blocks, friends. Let's just see if we can Control Z our way out of this. I don't remember if I passed the one that I wanted it to. Batman, yeah. Okay, so I'm back past the Batman. Great, so now we're back to this other thing. Oh, I didn't show you the notes thing. All right, let's go back in and let's edit this thing again. So we'll go ahead and add in our title because that's not something that we want to move. So I'm just going to grab another attribute and I'm going to say title. And my prompt is title. And the default is, shockingly, I know, title. The justification is going to be left, bottom left. Standard 1/8, whatever. This is all on a single line. Fantastic. I'm going to put it there and then I'm going to move it. And you'll notice that because the attribute names are a little bit bigger, things are overlapping, that's okay. The attribute names are not what's going to eventually be there, so we won't actually see it. So I have my title there. I want to add in yet another one. And I'm going to call this notes, and the prompt is going to be notes, and the default is going to be notes. And I'm going to click over here, multiple lines. This is going to give me some more options, which I don't actually necessarily need to do anything with. So let's take a look at this again. Justification, top left, yes. Standard, text height is still an 1/8 rotation. So if you have a particular width that you know that you have to stay in, so for example, in your title block, everything has to fit within the block that it's given, you can give it a limit to how far it can go. I don't recommend doing that with a title block with your reference line, because your reference line sometimes is the entire width of your bottom page, depending on what you're drawing or what size paper you're drawing on. So there's that. We're going to click OK. I'm going to put it in place. I'm going to give it the scoochy scooch. And I'm going to close it, save it, sync it. And now I have those notes. And ideally, everything else behaves the way it should. Look at that. How beautiful. Okay. I did all of that in model space. I totally could have done that somewhere else, but let's say that I have now gone into my, I'm getting ready to plate something and I want to use this brand new title block that I just created. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drop it in here. Oh no, it looks grumpy. Let's say it's 1. Oh, the view is the, say it's top view, not to scale. Let's call it platform. Oh, that's why it looks weird, because I wasn't using all caps. And then here, my notes are the size that I make them, basically. So this is a make 1, use 2x4. So now it's behaving the way that that other one did. Lovely. And I can close out of that. And now we made the thing that behaves the same way as that other one did, just maybe a little bit more. So no, okay. Always test your blocks, friends, because here we have found a place where there's something that I missed. So I'm going to go back through, edit. These are not visible on other states. So I need to go back through each of these states. I think, so on Mac, there's a way to do, like, make it visible on all the visibility states. And they don't have that on PC. And I think it is incredibly frustrating that, like, they just can't decide which way they want it to be. And also that, like, having a make visible on all is a great idea, but they didn't do it on this one for whatever reason. So anyway, there's that. I'm gonna close that block editor. I'm gonna save the changes. I'm gonna take a look at that. I'm gonna do an @sync. This one, maybe I'm gonna type regen. Did I not save it? Maybe I just missed 2-inch. I think that's what it was. That's annoying. Cool. Let me do that @sync again, or Batman. Okay, something that's gonna bug me is that that these two are not all caps. And I'm gonna change, say edit, and it's gonna say title. Oh, title. And this one is gonna say, well, one thing, I'm gonna extend that, and then it's gonna say notes. Let me bring that in again. It really got grumpy about that @sync. Or that Batman. I think it's okay. Oh, I forgot to do the... So test your blocks, try to break them. Like, do all of the different combinations of whatever so that you can see if it actually worked. Yep, that's what I forgot. There we go. There it is. Close it. Close it. Save it. Excellent. So now I try to do the clicky click. Great. All right, so there's that. So you can use those same concepts and those same tools in all kinds of places. Like my title block is pretty, has a lot of that stuff built in. You can see here that I'm using that same C-tab variable to automatically generate this. So that, oh, let me just show you that. So if this is drawing 215, I hit enter, nothing happens, but that's because it just hasn't regenerated yet. So I can either type regen, and it becomes 215. So you'll see 215 is there, but also 215 is here as well. Or let's say that this is now 216. I could also just click away and then click back. And now it's 216, whichever one is easier for you. If you have a bunch of stuff, like if this is full of drawing, like whatever sheet you go to is full of stuff, it's actually faster to just type regen because it doesn't take it a second to load all the stuff and then have to load the other sheet again. But That's really only a problem if you have an old laptop. So there is that. So do play with this stuff. Try it out, fuss with it, see if you can break it, and then try to fix it. Play with all the various settings. Like if you're gonna make something that looks like this, and you're like, oh, I haven't done anything that rotates before. Just go do it. See what happens. It'll be great. That's the way that you learn. If you have questions, let me know. Sorry, this one was kind of long, but I think it was important. Have a good one.